Another episode of the Short Time Wrestling Podcast. Jason Bryan here with you. Today, going back in time, we're going to catch up with an old friend, Ryan Tressel, currently the Director of Championships and Alliances for the NCAA. Today, we're going to talk women's collegiate wrestling. We're talking about the first National Collegiate Women's Wrestling Championships run by the NCAA coming up in March in Coralville, Iowa. And before we get into the women's wrestling and the evolution of the sport and the NCAA's role in all this, we got to go back to Birmingham, man, because I think that's when we first met at the NCAA Division II festival. We had indoor track and field, swimming and diving, and wrestling all converging at the same time. I think it was the second D2 festival, and you guys made a lot of changes between the 09 Houston and the 13 in Birmingham.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. First of all, Jason, great seeing you. Great to relive those moments. It was that was my first. You were my first year there, and so you got me right away. And and
it's pretty rough going into one of those first wrestling championships, having to deal with a very verbose me. And now look at us, we're adults. We're adulting now. I've got 2 kids now. I had just the one then. Go figure.
Yeah, back in the day. So no, it was great. It was good. It's been a number of years now, and now it's like, wow, that was that long ago. It seems like just yesterday we were running around Birmingham, but. Yeah,
nothing is really fast in Birmingham. That's one thing I learned. If you wanted to go to like a Chili's or an Applebee's, it was like an hour and a half ordeal. Like I'm from Virginia, so it's not deep south, but it's south, and it's a little slower when you go out to eat. You're like, oh hey, you're having your iced tea and you're having a conversation. Birmingham, man, it was like it was like after church, you're there for like 3 hours, man. It was no joke.
Yes. Oh boy, yep.
But we're heading to Coralville, Iowa, so that is Iowa City adjacent for those who are geographically challenged for the inaugural NCAA National Collegiate Women's Championships. And your charge is to run that thing, and part of your role, before we get into the tournament operations itself, describe what your job and role is with the NCAA and where people may have actually seen you before, even if they aren't wrestling people.
Yeah, like I said, I've been here since 2012, so I've had a number of championships. I've had everything from women's bowling, women's Division III tennis, Division II volleyball, and currently have Division I men's lacrosse also, along with starting up the first ever women's national collegiate championship. And really, it's just running each of those championships from start to finish, like making sure everybody's set from the selections of the event, working with the committees who are really the ones that are charged with the oversight of those events and championships. And then executing throughout the championship rounds, and then working with that final host to put on the best possible experience for student athletes, fans, coaches, and everybody.
You guys have your unique roles and jobs, and each event is different. But to give those wrestling fans who are familiar more with the Division I championships, your role is what Mark Beddix is for NCAA Wrestling now. Prior, it was Anthony Holman. So those are some names that our D1 men's wrestling fans are familiar with. And what goes into building a championships, I mean, it's the staff, the volunteers, it's the sports commission, which we'll talk about, Think Iowa City and the Iowa City Area Sports Commission here in a bit. But it's hiring the announcers, it's getting everything together. So to start a brand new championship, this is something the NCAA has done multiple times. We've gone from emerging sports status to championship status with a number of sports, but women's wrestling creates its own unique set of challenges anyway, because it's an individual championship and you've got a lot of athletes to deal with. So what were some of the initial things the NCAA had to do to build this championship to an official status?
Yeah, I mean, it really was starting from scratch. The good thing, having men's Division II, Division III really was sort of a template, because it's so much different than what Division I men's is at. That we were able to utilize a lot of that, and my experience with having D2s for almost 10 years really helped with all that too, as far as, hey, this is what we need to do, this is where we need to go. But it was developing a lot of that. It was developing, all the manuals, everything that we were doing, we had to develop from scratch, starting with, hey, how many qualifiers? What's the format look like? How many regions? How's that all working out? Once again, we would rely back on a little bit of the templates that we've had for D2s and D3 men to help us along the way. But a lot of it was new, and the committee really got through a lot of this. And I mean, we met more times than we probably wanted to or needed to, but just to make sure we were covering all our bases with everything.
In building this, I mean, a lot of these administrators at the smaller schools we've learned there's not as a while there is a kind of nomadic or transient kind of nature to athletics administration as a whole. You're working with teams that in schools that you're familiar with anyway from those Division II and Division III eras in this National Collegiate Championship. So it's not a whole lot of new faces you're seeing. You're saying, hey, yeah, we've got a men's wrestling program. So how easy has it been to start a new championship with familiar people at the helm?
Yeah, it's been great. It's been really good as far as, I mean, a lot of the people, the key players, working with the National Wrestling Coaches Association, Jackie Paquette and that crew has been tremendous. A lot of the other people too that you sort of dealt with throughout my Division II wrestling era there are really there for this too. So it's been really good just to get back to it. I've been a few years out from wrestling with that. And just working with all them everyone's on board. Everybody wants this to be they're so excited about it and want it to be the best possible that it's just a great thing for all of us.
Now, the process, the National Collegiate Women's Wrestling Championships has been kind of a placeholder, for lack of a better term, type of event. It's been the championship with the NCAA schools across all three divisions. The NAIA had a championship a couple years before. And so now it was just a natural progression, I guess, if we want to draw any comparisons to, I guess, where I went to school, women's basketball was a national champion, the old AIAW, before the NCAA adopted the women's sports. It was kind of that path was, okay, you've got an infrastructure of teams and coaches, and you've talked about their affiliation with the Coaches Association. So you've got something that was kind of there, and then applying the NCAA stamp. Now there's a little bit of pushback on a couple things, but as a whole, having a process in motion, that also made things a lot easier starting a championship from scratch, because it really wasn't from scratch.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I was able to go to last year's non-NCAA version that they've had. It was sort of a group together.
Version.
Yeah, non-NCAA version. And they did a great job. They did an awesome job. They actually took a number of things I believe was, whether it's from Division II or Division III. So a lot of this will seem somewhat familiar with them. So they're not totally, well, what is going on? They'll be used to it, but then hopefully we'll put on some bells and whistles that'll really excite them and make this really a special moment for each and every one of them.
Yeah, so the event's March 6th and 7th, 2026, Coralville, Iowa, again, Iowa City adjacent. So from the north or south, you're basically taking 35 and then cutting over. It's a pretty easy drive from up north or from, east-west. I think it was 80 that cuts through,
80,
if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So, and I've worked that building before. I've been a number of wrestling events there. They just finished up the Iowa Girls High School State Wrestling Championships there. And you'd seen it, obviously, with the NCWWC Championships last year. But Josh Schamberger, Luke Eustace, the crew at Think Iowa City and the Iowa City Area Sports Commission, they have got a gem of a venue there. So when you walk into that building and see it, be like, we can do more than just wrestling here.
Oh, yeah. It's exactly what we said. He said, hey, can I talk to my hockey people, our basketball people, our volleyball people? The venue's great. And like you said, Luke and those guys, top notch. I mean, they know how to run events. They know how to do first class events. I mean, they're coming with ideas and things on how we can make things even better than they have been. And they just do a lot of them. They do a lot of things like that. And they really have a good pulse of the community and everything that's going on. So really excited to work with them and see what we can get through here after March 8th will be a good time for us.
Yeah, that Iowa River Landing. I remember going there. I think it was the 2012 Olympic trials in Iowa City at Carver Hawkeye. And it was just the hotel at the end of the block. That was pretty much, and the Denny's, I think, on the corner. That was pretty much it. And now we've got, I'm a craft beer snob, and I know we're not endorsing the imbibing there, but there's places, wrestling fans, men or women, they are a social breed. So those who've never been to the Iowa River Landing, they're going to have plenty of options for just hanging out, talking wrestling. There's hotels right there near it. And from a logistics standpoint, there's a hotel connected to the arena. I mean, there's 3 or 4 right there walking distance. And I don't mean walking distance like a half a mile, like walking distance like you can measure it in yards. So that's one thing that really brings a lot to a brand new event. You've got an infrastructure there. You don't get a lot of places.
Yeah, it is so unique and so cool. Like when we first came in to visit the place, like you said, there's restaurants. You walk outside the front doors and there's 2, 3, 4 restaurants right there you can choose from. There's hotels right out attached and then literally across the street. There's a Trader Joe's across the street if you need some groceries. You call
Parking
the
lot's
Denny's
still
out.
not
You
great
might-
with a Trader Joe's, just to stick with the
well,
theme of Trader Joe's and
true,
bad parking lots. But yeah.
true. True. I figured you remember the Denny's too. As far as all that goes,
What you
but
trying to
it's
say?
a great spot. It's a
Yeah.
great
May or
spot.
may
It's
not have
really
had some. Yeah.
they do a great thing, and then they have an attached gym, gymnasium set up there that's really really great to have as far as space for teams and warm ups and team camps and things like that. So that's really you add that along with the just how nice the venue is. I mean, it's really top notch.
So let's roll back the curtain, I guess, a little bit on developing a championship sport from an emerging sport. So the process is you've got to have X number of schools that are either committed or have a sport in action. And then they have to basically say, hey, we'll support this. How do you go from, well, first of all, how do you become an emerging sport? Because we're not even into the championship status yet. How do we get there? But so before we're championship status this year, how does the sport become an emerging sport?
Yeah, I mean, they just moved. You got to get it adopted. And one example this past January, they voted in women's flag football. Pretty fast. It's growing very fast itself, just like wrestling has grown huge with women's. So once you get to that emerging status and you're voted in to be an emerging sport, then you got to show sustainability. With 40 is the magic number right now. Obviously, things change at times, and once you get to that 40, I think Division II has adjusted their number now where they could form their own championship with 35 at times, with different things. But to start off, you'll need to, once you go emerging, once you get that 40, then you have to start off currently the way the legislation sits at National Collegiate, which means a lot of you guys might know that National Collegiate is just a multiple division together. And that doesn't necessarily mean it always has to be Division 1, 2, and 3 together. Like men's volleyball has Division 1 and 2 or 1, their National Collegiate, and then Division 3 has their own separate championship. And so that leads us into, a few weeks ago in January, it was voted on by the Division 3 governance structure that they wanted their own championship for women's wrestling already. They've grown so fast that they have their 40. So they're able to do that. It was approved. And so we'll look at 2028 is when we're looking to have a Division 3 specific women's wrestling championship. So excited for that too.
Yeah, and the terminology, somebody who's a bit of a stuck up when it comes to semantics, like it's National Collegiate, like in women's hockey. So it's very similar like that. That was an emerging sport, championship status, National Collegiate, and they have Division 3. Whereas you talk to some of the hockey players, say, yeah, it's D1 women's hockey. Well, I mean, you're not wrong, but you're not technically right either. So how do you guys kind of challenge the terminology, or you just say, yeah, whatever?
Yeah, most of the time it's, yeah, whatever. When it is a National Collegiate, it is all governed and sort of almost, funded by Division 1. So a lot of this and everything we're doing is Division 1. Now, once Division 3 breaks away, that will become under the Division 3 governance and their policies and more of their, whether it's travel regulations and different types of things that they need to do on that side would happen there. So until then, we're sort of a Division 1 National Collegiate. We sort of run all together. All of our meetings here, it's a sort of a Division 1 National Collegiate, all one sort of happy family right there. This one is different because there is a majority of these in this National Collegiate one that are not Division 1, where some of the other championships, beach volleyball, for example, most of the National Collegiate teams in National Collegiate women's volleyball are Division 1. So there's a little bit difference there, but really we just say, hey, it is what it is, and let's go.
The word that's been kind of used a lot with some of the negative aspects of what we've got in the world of college athletics these days are the words changing landscape but we're going to spin this a different way. The changing landscape for wrestling is then the influx of hundreds of teams. 127 of them are NCAA schools. 108 started the year championship eligible. I think we had 99 was the amount that had set number of events with set number of athletes. There's some benchmarks you got to hit to be championship eligible, but you're looking at that very first championship is going to have 99 teams entering the regional qualifying system. And from the NCAA standpoint, where does that sit? I mean, what were you guys expecting? And the results be like, wow, this took off, or are you ahead schedule, behind schedule? Where do you think the sport of women's wrestling is from the NCAA's perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it was I want to say surprising. I mean, from when it first was said, yes, we're going to do this, to now, it takes 40. Well, we're more than double the amount from that number. And so really it's just crazy. I mean, thinking back to our last championship that went from emerging to championship status was beach volleyball. And I think they got to 40, and then you might hover around the 40 to 50. Like this is unprecedented a little bit as far as how fast this has grown. And so that's definitely something that they'll be taking back for future. We have there's a lot of emerging sports right now that are looking to become championship eligible here in the next couple of years. So we might see a number of other ones, our 92nd, 93rd, 94th. We might end up with 100 by the time in a few years here. Who knows? So with that, it's growing so fast, and hey, we can't plan for all of that, but yeah, definitely something that we want to keep track of and make sure, hey, we ready to make sure we can get to the next steps with things. And that's where, they had enough already to pull out, for Division III to pull out and become their own championship too. So a lot of work to do with that on what that looks like right now. They just literally just said yes to that. And so now is when the work will start to say, okay, how will that look? How will that national collegiate work even? Once you pull out 60 schools from what we have with national collegiate, that's going to leave, 40 some odd schools there. So what will that look like too? So number of things we're working on, looking at, hey, will it be still at one site? Will it be at separate sites? There's all things are on the table to really see, like, hey, what will make women's wrestling the best it can be?
Yeah, the championships at one site. We were joking about that at the beginning with the D2 festival with 3 different sports. Well, how realistic could it be that you have National Collegiate and Division III women, for example, in 2028 at the same site? That's something that never quite crosses my mind, because I've been at 1 year I was at D2, D3, D1s back to back weekends. That really hasn't been a thing. I mean, how many other sports have that kind of format?
Yeah, there's a couple, just to come off the top of my head, like rowing. Rowing, we do Division I, II, and III all together at one site. Just works all together. We just stagger the schedule, so that's what we look to do. Is if that, once again, a lot of layers, a lot of planning, a lot of what if, and what we want to do, and work with the committees of each of those. Division III, obviously they'd need to be on board, and national collegiate committees would need to be on board with whatever we do. So it's definitely some work to do to see if that could work. But yeah, I think all ideas are out there to really make sure we hit this the right way.
What's been, I guess, probably the easiest thing to go from, brand new championship sport and running this type of thing?
I mean, I'd probably say the excitement. Right now, like, everybody I talk to is more than willing, loving. Yes, I can help. Yes, I'd love. How can I reach? What can I do? What can I do? Everyone's really, been pretty amazing at wanting this thing to be so successful that they'll do anything and help with anything, as far as, getting this thing off the ground. So working with USA Wrestling on a number of things, they've been awesome to work with. Obviously we talked about Luke and the crew at the LOC there, local organizing committee there in town. Everyone's so excited about it that really wants it to be successful. So that's probably the best part.
Yeah, the USA Wrestling tie-in also leads to the next question: is women's wrestling is freestyle, the international style. So we've got a rule set that's predominantly set up based out of the office in Switzerland with United World Wrestling, with some, there are modifications like headgear and such with the NCAA. But when it comes to the different styles between the men's collegiate folk style side and the women's collegiate freestyle, were there any, logistical differences in that? Or was it just like, hey, no, it's still wrestling, it's mats? Referee numbers are a little different, but what were some of the challenges with running a folk style event versus a freestyle event?
Yeah, it really wasn't too much. Like you said, it's pretty much everything that I have to deal with on the outside was pretty much the same. A few little things, the officials have paddles, and there's a couple more of them there, and they do a couple little things differently. Instead of green, it's blue. Those couple things like that. But otherwise, everything that I'm having to deal with pretty similar to my D2 days, and when I helped out with Division I there too. Everything's pretty much the same. Now the officials and our sector rules editor, or rules interpreter, I should say, they refine all that stuff, and obviously have some things they need to do different there. But everything else that I got to work with is pretty good.
One thing about the location is, as somebody who's been a PA announcer for a number of national championships, I think I'm close to 50 events that I've worked in a media role, a lot of them PA and broadcast. And built in right there is Dort Mayab. So
Yeah.
she's been a long time, and I've worked the Olympic trials with her. I've worked other championship events with her, and have her. You save on travel there. She's right there, and that's a nice voice to have to kick off your first NCAA event.
Yeah, we're excited. She's locked in, and Brian Zins from up in the Minnesota area there, up in Mankato's coming down for the other announcer spot. And I just can't seem to get you to answer the call anymore, So I don't know. I
I'm
don't know
already
what to
booked,
do.
man. I'm booked.
You're such a busy guy. So I mean, besides that, you're welcome at any point, though. If something falls through, you come on down. But yeah, we're excited about them. They were with me with my D2 days, and so real comfortable with some of that. As far as what they do, just the enhancements we'll be able to do because they'll already know most of the stuff, how we do it, when we do it, where we do it, all that.
Yeah, as far as the schedule goes, you got a 2-day event, first round and quarters on Friday, semis, and championship matches on Saturday. Now, a couple things that have come up. There is the initial pushback that, well, they're cutting the qualifiers. Well, you're not cutting the qualifiers. You can't. It didn't exist last year. So, in terming to set the qualifying numbers, how does that work with sports like this? And we know that Division III has 210. Division II has 180. Of course, Division I is the outlier almost in every NCAA championship with 330, given the representation. So how does a representation number and qualifying system work with a sport like women's wrestling?
Yeah, that was a tough one because obviously committees and everybody coming in want a million qualifiers. Everybody qualifies. So we really had to look at that, find out what was that happy medium and what worked. It's still the committee still would love to get more. When we came in, and I think a lot of it was based on the 40 and where we were at. So we were approved at a certain number, and then the committee had to come in and say, okay, hey, actually, can we get this number? And so we ended up getting up to 180 was our approval number. And so that gets approved by a higher up committee there at that point. And then we can continue to ask as we have rationale. Now, the rationale needs to match up and with certain things. And so we look at sort of whether it's percentages or hey, what the Division III and Division II's got, where they're sitting in their formats and what makes sense. And so, with Division II and their numbers and Division III with their numbers, it sort of made sense a little bit where we ended up with that. Because, with what we have, going from what they had previously in the non-NCAA version, we'll pay for all the travel to the final site and a lot of those bells and whistles and things like that. So there's a lot more to it. In what we'll do and what we'll provide for it. So that's probably another reason why it's not just whatever number they had.
And again, I'm not throwing fuel on the fire here. It's just one of these questions. So the multiple entries question is also one that is commonly come up. That's not a thing for any level of wrestling in the NCAA. So that probably was a non-starter on the women's side as well.
Yeah, I mean, committee talked about that too because it was their really call. It was their call for a lot of this stuff. Like we gave them sort of guardrails and said, "Hey, this is where we're thinking," and then they said, "Does this make sense?" And so that was one of them. We talked to them about saying, "Hey, what works here?" And so there was numbers thrown around here and there on where we can go and what we could do, where they were at before and such. And so it just made sense for them to stick with the 10, one per weight class. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's in line with, again, how most places do it. I know some high school states do multiple entries. Of course, the NAI has up to 12 on the men's and women's side there. But looking at the future of women's wrestling and the future where this thing is, I mean, again, we've blown up. We're talking in the last 25 years since the turn of the century, like every existing college wrestling team. I mean, before the turn of the century, it was Minnesota Morris, and they don't even have a program, men or women, anymore. And it's like it used to be a novelty, and now we've got, just records left and right. I mean, state associations, and looking at schools becoming or sports becoming championship. How much does the NCAA look at the state high school national NFHS numbers in terms of like, well, there's potential here because there are some sports that are in that emerging status that have more college opportunities than they do high school opportunities. Logically, you'd look, this sport has a ton of numbers. We should do this. So where's the I guess the synergy with the numbers between the NCAA and the Federation of High School State Associations?
Yeah, I think it's something we actually we look at, we track and such, but really that's what helps these schools to say, oh wow, we need to do this. And so that helps them. And then it's just that wheel that then they get excited there. And then the more that they have, then it'll come to us, and hopefully we can continue to get more qualifiers or continue to have, you know, Division III, National Collegiate, or D1, D2, D3s continue to add schools so that each division could have their own championship at some point down the road, type of deal. So yeah, it really starts with those schools. That's the important part. We can't force schools to add it, but that's the great thing is I think the pressure, I don't want to call it pressure necessarily, but the popularity of all these high schools adding it in these states, that they're like, wow, this is great in our state. We should add this. This is a ton of kids. Let's do it. So that's what's really driving that then helps us drive it too.
And again, we're seeing programs that when the school adds, and it's not just NCAA schools, but you're seeing junior colleges, the NAI, the NCAA schools add, when they're coming on board with new sports, they're often adding men's and women's wrestling at the same time. So for years they would say, men's wrestling had no equivalent. Now we do have a collegiate equivalent on the wrestling side. So, from a big blue disc perspective, that's also got to be nice to see. We're like, all right, we're adding both genders with a sport at the same time.
Yeah, it's great. It's really good to have it like that and be able to, we're using a template we're using for men's, and so we can be similar. Doesn't have to be exactly equal all the time, but similar in what we'll need and such. So it's definitely a plus for us.
What are you probably most looking forward to when it comes to blowing the first whistle in Coralville on March the 6th?
Man, I've been thinking about this a little bit. It goes back to when I first helped out. We mentioned Holman. I helped Holman out my first couple years with Division Ones, and I remember walking out in Des Moines, Iowa, walking out into, at the time it was Wells Fargo Arena. I think it's changed now to the KC Arena or something. And people screaming too. I'm just screaming. The place was electric. The place was so exciting. I walk out. I'm like, oh my God, I thought I was going to go in because I'm like everything was. And so I'm looking for that when I come into, now it won't be 20,000 seats, 20,000 people, but just having the electricity. And then also, this is what at a lot of my championships, I love to watch the student athletes when they first come in for practices. And when they turn the corner to go into that arena, the feeling they get or the wow moments that they have it's so cool. This is for even those Power 5 schools, Power 4 schools, any schools. I mean, whatever level we're at, they turn that corner most of the time and they're like, oh, this is awesome. They run out and start screaming and dancing and doing everything they do. That's really the cool moment there for me.
And I guess to build upon that is when these athletes are in sports that are now, they have a championship, they have a chance to compete for a championship. Have you noticed a difference between how the athletes are, maybe a national, actually you'll see this from a wrestling side, but maybe from, okay, here was our last national championship that wasn't under the NCAA banner. And then the next year, the same athletes come in. Have you noticed any differences in those athletes?
Not yet. So with this being the first year, hopefully I'll get to see some of that, because I did get a watch last year. Some of what they had going on at the finals, site there in Coralville. And so, yeah, I look forward to seeing those ones from last year, seeing how we line up, how things happen, and then continuing on and continuing to build. That's the key.
One more logistics question. This is one that I've probably been harping on since the beginning of this potentially being a situation, and it's the place on the calendar. So when we're looking at March right now, this is a tough weekend for wrestling coverage, which we know, which is a big reason we're talking about this months out or weeks out, to get people to understand this is a big deal. If you're in the area, let's go there. If you're not in the area, make a plan to get there. So if you're a wrestling fan and you've got a tournament that's not within an easy trip, and you're like, yeah, I need to go watch something this weekend, we've got your solution here. We've got history. But when it comes to the calendar, there are, you mentioned we've got 91 championships and growing with the NCAA. How do you figure out where the championship fits on the calendar? Side note, before I get to that, I gotta say, I talked to Holly Rowe years ago down at the COSIDA, now CSC convention, about why NCAA softball had become so successful, and it was they shifted their season a little bit. I'm going to make this plea right now. Can we maybe shift it one way or the other to make sure that these our men's tournaments and our women's tournaments aren't overlapping each other, so our fan base can appreciate both? I mean, how do we have to how does that happen? How about that? How's that for
Yeah.
hypothetical?
Yeah, that's a committee call there, and so that's one of the first things we, along with the qualifiers, the what we talked a lot about was when. When do you want this thing? And so we talked about, obviously couldn't have it during the 2s and 3s or the Division One's finals. We talked about after that. Is there a time? And they talked about, they have some, so some of them have some
International age group events, yeah, the U20s,
yes.
U23s.
They have a bunch
that
of
run
things
in
going
April.
on, and there's some things there that start up, and so they were worried about going after that might not work, and so they landed on, basically what they did previous years, on that first weekend in March. Now, hey, that's something they can look at, and we can look at definitely if something made sense. I think they didn't want to go too early, and so that was just, hey, yeah, we're on the same weekend as D1 men's conference tournaments and such, but at least it wasn't on the finals. And then the other thing too with the D2s and 3s, there are some coaches out there that are doing both, as you know, like doing both coaching men's and women's, and so they were definitely not going to hit that one with the same being on the same weekend as that. So that's why they somewhat tried to figure that out. It wasn't perfect. And all other factor came in was, hey, is there linear television options? And so there wasn't necessarily, and so that wasn't anything that we had to worry about. But that was something too that they talked about, and we talked about to make sure, like, hey, is there anything out there that we can get on linear that would work? And really, nothing was popping up that was within the reason. And obviously, there's some crazy times that we're like, we can't do that.
It's not like ESPN in the early 80s. You're not like you're watching Arena Football League at 2 a.m. Art Schlichter style. Well, although the broadcasting brings up, how can people watch this? Like how is the NCAA championships streaming? We know that the big dog, the D1 men, is wall to wall from ESPN and their family networks. But what about the women's championships? How are we watching this?
Yeah, we're excited. ESPN Plus, so it'll stream, so anybody can watch it there on ESPN Plus. And we're going to do some whip around coverage, much like Division Ones have done. So we'll have the single mats that you'll be able to tune into with no audio, but then we'll have announcers doing the old whip around and going to the highlights and doing a bang up job there as far as getting to all formats. It'll be a format set up for sessions 1, 2, and 3, and then we'll go to a single finals mat with it. So exciting for that. Exciting to see how this works. And once again, we're going to look at this and, hey, is this the answer? Is there better ideas out there? Hey, how can we get Jason Bryant there in person? All these things, questions we ask ourselves.
The
all
answer
the
to that one's simply the calendar. That's all that one is. You go 1 week back, I'm in.
If I tell the committee, maybe we need to do something there. So
yeah, as much influence I think I may have in this, I don't think I have it. I don't think I have that much pull, as much as I'd like to think so. But Ryan, anything else that we feel like the wrestling community should know about the very first NCAA Women's Wrestling Championships?
Yeah, we covered a lot of it, just as far as, the history being made, the excitement that it's on, the growth, and just, if you're a wrestling fan, if you're a women's wrestling fan especially, we want this to be like a reunion. This is something that we want, whether you're a former student athlete and stuff, coming back, like, hey, we got to come back. Let's go back to, Coralville this year. Let's come back to Coralville, and they meet up. That's what we want to form, is sort of a lasting reunion style, almost, Division One men's. If you're a wrestling fan, you're going to that. You're going. Even if you can't find a way to get in, you're probably outside trying to peek in or something. So that's what we're trying to create. And I think the excitement's there, the history's there. We're gonna do some great things. So excited to get this thing going.
Yeah, and just, I guess, touching on that. So do we know what the plan is? Of course, the NCAA puts events out for bids. Regionals and national championships are in a bid process and things of that nature. So when will we know the next couple years for the women's championships and the locations?
Coming soon. So we should have 27 here soon. And then 28, we're going to wait a little bit to figure out what happens, obviously, with the D3s and the national collegiates and how that can happen. So that's why we're not going out multiple years in a row yet, because there's too many variables going on with all that. So once we figure that out, we'll get 28 and beyond solidified. Looking for some great places. So, I'll be asking everybody I know if they have a good venue, a good fan base, good places to go. It's hard sometimes when you have spoiled with some of these arenas and such that have attached gyms or attached ballroom centers, convention center type things. So we're
Yeah, like
definitely
Cedar
looking into
Rapids and
yes.
lacrosse for Division III wrestling. I mean, oh,
And-
you just
Yeah.
park and you're good, and then you can
Yep.
walk everywhere. It's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Exactly. Exactly. So looking for a lot of those types of things. So I'd love to hopefully some more of those pop up and we have some options to look at. So
Of course, I can't leave out Providence. Lonnie and his crew did a great job in Providence at D3 Wrestling last year, too. It's just, those are my good ones. So Ryan Tressel, the NCAA Director of Championships and Alliance, is talking National Collegiate Women's Championships, the first ever NCAA Women's Wrestling Championship coming March 6th and 7th, 2026 to Extreme Arena in Coralville. So check it out, ESPN Plus streaming. So it's going to be fun. I'm going to be glued. I'm going to be everywhere that weekend. I'm going to be glued to like 8 screens at the event I'm at because it's always, that's like a wrestling junkies just weekend to be like, okay, brackets, you got multiple screens, and we've added the women to that as well. So Ryan, appreciate the time and good luck with the event.
thank you. Thanks, Jason. Appreciate it.